I think it's really important to protect children, and that's little girls who are also involved in that category.
Now, all of a sudden, we're going to use a vulnerable group of people in the trans community to be like, oh, well, we're just protecting women's sports and we care so much about it.
When it comes just to protecting young girls in sport and women in sport, I feel very strongly about that. I think that's why you have Title IX.
The Heritage Foundation is now going to go after Title IX. So is it about reproductive rights, or is it about just women's rights in general?
I'm there to love. But I'm also there to love biological women, and I think that there are rights that need to be protected.
It's an attack on women in society, and I think the tie between the Heritage Foundation now wanting to go after Title IX, it's just like so blatant. Like, let's connect these dots. It's more than just a couple of trans kids in the entire country and a couple in each state being able to participate in some youth sports.
She clearly has no friends with kids, no friends, especially with daughters. She makes this argument that if you don't want boys in women's sports, you hate women's sports. The argument can be made much easier if you use the reverse. If you want boys in women's sports, there goes women's sports. That's why women's sports was created. Her entire belief system, it doesn't matter to her what you say, because she's living in a delusion. Men are not women, and they never will be. That's why they attach trans to it, because it's not real. I think she's done irreparable harm to the gay and lesbian movement by putting men who think they're women in the same universe as gays and lesbians, when trans effectively eliminates gays and lesbians from that universe. If you switch, if you left a boy alone, he most likely would be gay. If you left a girl alone, she'd be a lesbian. She doesn't do this for the sake of other women. She's doing it for herself. Her status is going away. It's incredibly convenient now that she no longer plays. I'm sure in the 2000s, when she played college or went pro in 2009, if this coincided with her career and affected it, oh, she would have been pissed off. She would have been pissed off, but it did.
What's up, family? So we got another one for you today, and I got to tell you, this one had me sitting here shaking my head in a way, because Megan Rapinoe went on The View and said some things that I honestly don't even know how to describe, other than completely detached from reality. And normally I try to look at things from different angles, give both sides their fair shake. But sometimes you hear something and you just got to call it what it is. So we're going to break this down, look at what was actually said, why it doesn't add up, and what this whole conversation is really about at the end of the day, because this isn't just about one athlete or one TV show. This is about a bigger fight over truth language and who gets to decide what words even mean anymore. So here's what happened. Megan Rapinoe went on The View, sitting right there with the panel. She started talking about trans athletes and women's sports. And right away, she tried to flip the whole thing on its head. She said that keeping biological males out of women's sports isn't really about protecting girls. It's actually an attack on women. And she said the Heritage Foundation is coming after the Title IX, and that this whole thing is connected to rolling back Roe v. Wade and marriage equality. And she said it with so much confidence, like she was revealing some hidden truth that only she could see. Now let's think about that for a second. She's saying that protecting a space for biological girls to compete fairly is somehow an attack on women. That doesn't even work logically. Title IX was created specifically to give women equal opportunity in sports and education. So if you're letting biological males compete against biological females, you're literally undermining the whole reason Title IX exists in the first place. The law was designed to level the playing field for women, not to erase it entirely. And here's where it gets really interesting. At no point during that entire segment, which we'll see in a minute, did anybody on the panel ask her the one question that would have broken her entire argument in about 5 seconds. The question is simple. What is a woman? If you can't define what a woman is, then you can't talk about women's sports. You can't talk about women's rights, and you can't talk about Title IX, and you can't talk about any of it. Because if a man can be a woman, then what exactly are we protecting? And what exactly are we fighting for? The words stop meaning anything, and that's the problem. They want to have all these conversations about protecting women, but they refuse to define what a woman actually is. And you can't have it both ways. You can't say a man can become a woman and then turn around and talk about defending women's spaces. The logic collapses on itself. And then she went even further because she started talking about some bill in Washington that she claimed would require little girls to get their um, genitals examined to prove they are girls. Now, I want to be real clear about this. Nobody is proposing that. Nobody. She just made it up. And the hostess on The View sat there nodding along like she was revealing classified information. They didn't fact check her. They didn't push back. They didn't ask her a single follow-up question. They just let it hang there in the air. And that's the thing about these conversations. When you're on a platform like The View and you have a full panel of women sitting there and not one of them says, wait, does that bill actually exist? Or can you show me where that's written? Then you know they're not interested in the truth. And if you question them about the truth, all they're going to do is attack, deflect, and change topic. Typical move for not taking accountability. So they're interested in the narrative and they're interested in emotions. And they're interested in making people feel scared and outraged about something that isn't even real. Now, be fair, I gotta say this. The people who support Megan Rapone's position would probably say they're just trying to protect a vulnerable group from discrimination. They'll say trans people are a tiny minority and this whole thing is blown out of proportion. And they'll say the real motive behind these laws is bigotry and not protecting women. I hear that. I understand that perspective. But here's the problem. When you look at what's actually happening in real life, and when you look at biological males taking scholarships, records, and podium spots from biological females, that's not theory, that's reality. And that's happening right now. And the woman who spoke up about it, Sophia Cunningham, which was in the earlier of this clip that I just played, who plays for the Indiana Fever in the WNBA, she's basically saying, hey, this isn't fair to biological girls. They get attacked, they get canceled, they get called bigots just for speaking up about it. They get called bigots just for saying this isn't fair to biological girls. So whose side is really about protecting women? Let me know in the comments, because from where I'm sitting, the side that says let biological boys compete against biological girls is the side that's actually erasing women's sports. And the side that says, hold on, let's protect the category of women's sports is the side trying to preserve the one space women fought for decades to build.
And another thing about this trans panic in sports, since Sophie Cunningham wanted to open up her fucking mouth, and I'm actually just going to expand this to the trans panic in Western society currently. Y'all don't even know trans people to be this scared of them. Like, y'all literally don't know any. You don't interact with them on any kind of a frequent basis. You want to know how I know you don't? Is because I don't. And I actively hang out with my LGBTQ friends all the fucking time. I'm in their spaces when they want me there. And I seldom bump into trans people. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very few and far between for me. I'm actively in the spaces that they would be in, and I don't even bump into them like that. You're telling me, you're trying to convince me that they're out here in droves with nefarious intent to dominate women's sports because they have a biological advantage. What the fuck are y'all talking about? What do you can't tell me the last time you had a conversation with a trans person in the last 365 days. You can't tell me. Cause you don't interact with them. You don't even fucking see them. What are you talking about? What do you actually you all sound fucking insane to me. Insane. They are a literal boogeyman to you because you don't even know that they're real. Like, you literally don't interact with them in your real life and you're fucking terrified of them. Like, they're not normal people. When's the last time you hooped with a trans person? Anybody? Most of you can say you've never done that. I've never fucking done that. What are you talking about? What is Sophie Cunningham talking about? She wants to protect girls. What are you fucking saying? What do you mean? There's no reasonable amount of numbers or statistics to back up that claim that they're just out here dominating women's sports. There's like 12 trans Division I athletes across all fucking Division I sports. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? It's literally a non-issue. You're all driving me crazy. Everybody shut the fuck up, please, please.
Of the fight for equal pay in women's sports. And she has been. She has been. In 2019, you and your teammates filed a landmark class action lawsuit against the U.S. Soccer Federation, eventually resulting in a $24 million settlement. Wow. Yes. A pledge to equalize pay. An historic 2022 collective bargaining agreement that, among other things, requires an equal split of World Cup prize money between the men and women's team, which I think is incredible. So what does that mean to you? That you were the face of that, the voice.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I feel so proud of that. I, stand on the shoulders of so many, Mia and Abby and, Michelle Akers, and so I think just so many women in general who have like fought for that. I think you guys can all attest to it. We've gone through different phases in all of our lives, and to be able to accomplish something like that while accomplishing all that we did on the field. I mean, I have so many people come up to me that are like, you're an inspiration to my son and my daughter, or I asked for a raise because of you and the team, and because of Alex and because of Carly and so many other players. And so to be able to use this talent that I was, given, born with, really. Obviously, I worked hard, but to be able to use that in something I love to do to like actually make a difference in the world is kind of what it's all about.
Better than that.
Yeah, what's better than that? Yeah, it's like it's great playing soccer. I loved playing soccer, and I loved the success, but ultimately there's got to be something more and bigger and better than that. And I feel like the equal pay was a huge legacy that now I can look at the way that women's sports is being treated now, whether it's WNBA or the PWHL or the NWSL. All of these leagues are like thriving and really kind of on this rocket ship. And I think a huge part of that had to do with the collective awakening that we're all having, and a lot in part due to the equal pay.
Yeah, and that people love watching women's sports.
Yes.
That's a huge part of it.
Turns out.
It's
crazy, but they love it.
So for years, you've been an outspoken advocate for so many people, including the trans community. And there's been a lot of debate about trans women in sports. And you recently wrote an article basically saying that anti-trans legislation is not actually about protecting girls, but distracting from us from what really matters. Tell us what you mean by that.
It's a beautiful article.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think what I mean by that is let's just like pull back a little. At first it was like, well, nobody likes women's sports and nobody wants to watch it. Or there was, abuse happening and nobody seemed to care. Now all of a sudden we're going to use a vulnerable group of people in the trans community to be like, oh, well, we're just protecting women's sports and we care so much about it. When the Heritage Foundation is now going to go after Title IX. So is it about reproductive rights, or is it about just women's rights in general? We're seeing the rollback of Roe v. Wade. Marriage equality, I feel like, is getting put back on the table. That was settled law. And so all of these things, like, yes, they're going after trans people in sports, and they're using this as a wedge issue because we love sports and, we don't want our little girls to be unsafe in sports. And it's like, unsafe from who? But okay. But now we're using this as like an overarching thing, when really what we're attacking women. We're saying, if you look like this as a woman, you can play. If you look like this as a woman, there's a bill in Washington happening right now that's going to require all girls, just like full stop, to go through a sex test, an invasive, like, examining their genitals to see if they're a woman.
Yeah. And that has not worked out well historically for people to do that.
We know what that means. Black girls are going to get questioned more, and they're going to get questioned first. Who's doing the examination?
Who wants to subject themselves to that?
And so they're going to see a pullback. They don't like women in sports because it helps us with confidence and power. And we see so many women in the C-suite played elite level sports. It's just great for you physically and all of it, but it's an attack on women in society. And I think the tie between the Heritage Foundation now wanting to go after Title IX, it's just like so blatant. Like, let's connect these dots. It's more than just a couple of trans kids in the entire country and a couple in each state being able to participate in some youth sports.
Yeah. Well, after retiring from your professional soccer career, you've actually hosted several successful podcasts, but now you're debuting a new podcast.
We're going to leave that there. Now, here's the bigger picture. And this is where I really want you to pay attention. Because what Megan Rapinoe did on The View isn't just a one-time thing. This is a pattern. This is what happens when you abandon objective truth and replace it with feelings and identity. And if you can't define what a woman is, then you can't define what a woman's right is. If you can't define what a woman is, then you can't say you're fighting for a woman. If you can't define what a woman is, then every law, policy, and program that was designed to protect women becomes meaningless. And that's the goal for a lot of these people, whether they realize it or not. They don't want clear definitions because clear definitions create boundaries, and boundaries tell you what you can't do. and they want ambiguity because ambiguity gives them power to decide what everything means in the moment. It makes everything questionable, but it's nothing definitive. And that's the dangerous part. That's the kind of thing that erodes institutions, laws, and trust. And a lot of times, for example, I'll give you an example. A lot of people don't like to embrace the truth, and the truth can be painful, or the truth can be not as very much popular, but you have to have a starting point. And the truth is the starting point, which gives you the navigation to actually know where you're driving or where you're putting that energy as a driving force to make sure you're going in the right direction. But to have a definitive route, you have to actually know the truth, which will set you free to actually solve the things while you continue to go into the direction you're going. But if you don't know what you're learning from, or you don't know what is right from wrong, then how can you know where you're going if you're not basically seeking truth and understanding? So when you can't agree on basic facts about human biology, you can't have functional society, right? You just can't. There has to be a definitive truth, and the truth is a starting point, even in your own life. If you don't embrace the truth, then how do you know what needs to be fixed or what adjustments you need to make along the way to actually ensure that you're going the right way? So the truth is a starting point. If you continue to go in a direction where it's based on a foundation of lies, eventually the lies kept catch up with you because now you actually don't have a starting point. You are just in a space of everything being questionable to the point where you won't have a definitive um starting point to actually reach where you're trying to go because you can't measure it. Because if it becomes questionable and there's no standard, then that means the truth can't take place. Truth creates the standard. Without standards, you can't measure success. If you can't measure where you're going, then how the hell you know where you're going? So it's the same way with a GPS. If you put an address in there, but you don't have a definitive address, and you just put an IEP address in there, or and then not to get technical, but if you put an IP address or the coordinates to a certain location or a certain county within that area where you're going, you don't have a definitive address to know where you're actually going in regards to that direct location. You're just going in an area that's questionable in itself because you don't know where you're going, where you're trying to go in that area. You just know that you're in some area. So where is the definitive standpoint and where does it lie? Only with the truth of you knowing that original address, so you know definitively where you're going and where it ends to get to your destination. So I say all that to say, tying it back to this conversation with biology and stuff, you can't agree on basic facts about human biology. You can't have a functional society. You just can't. And here's the other thing that really gets me. Megan Rapinoe fought for equal pay in women's soccer. She went to court. She got a settlement. You heard in this clip. She stood on that stage talking about how important it is to fight for women, but now she's defending a position that would allow biological males to compete in the very category she benefited from. Peep that. Think about that. The same woman who said women deserve equal pay, equal treatment, equal opportunity is now saying it's okay for biological males to take those opportunities from biological females. If this had happened when she was playing soccer, if she had lost her spot on the national team to a biological male, you think she would have been quiet about it? Especially for the simple fact that it's costing or hurting her pockets because she won't get that pay. Absolutely won't not. She won't be quiet about it because it's hurting her. See, people want to talk about and generalize things when it's not affecting them, but when it comes to them, they're very, very, very specific. So she would have been furious. She would have been right. She would have had the right to be furious. But because she's retired, because it doesn't affect her personally, she can sit on a TV show and lecture everybody about how protecting women is actually attacking women. That's the privilege of being done with your career. You get to advocate for policies that don't harm the next generation of girls because it doesn't cost you anything. And that's not true leadership. True leadership is generally the leader willing to make things, willing to have something cost them to save their people, than rather it costs their people they're leading and it doesn't cost them anything. Selfishness, I would call it. You can't serve people as a public servant, which requires selflessness. But when it comes to things you're trying to do, you have hidden agendas and motives that obviously are selfish when it comes to self-enrichment. You can't serve two ways. Eventually, you're delusional, because if you think you're going to have success serving the people that you're leading, you won't. Because the simple fact is, you worrying about if it costs you something. Even if it was the greater good and it cost you for the betterment of the people you're serving, you still wouldn't do it. So the action will say much about your character as it takes place, which is the true test of a leader anyway, if it does cost you something. So here's the life wisdom in all of this, because the Bible says in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 19, the lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. And that's really what we're seeing right here. We're seeing it right here play out in this clip that we watch. You can build an entire argument on feelings. You can build it on identity. You can make it sound compassionate and caring. But if it's not built on truth, it's not going to last. Truth has a way of winning out in the end. And it might take time. People might fight against it, but eventually reality catches up to you. And that applies to this whole conversation about women's sports. It also applies to everyday life. When you build your decisions on what's true instead of what feels good in the moment, you save yourself a lot of pain down the road, right? It's the same thing as people would say when it comes to being committed. In this case, we're talking sports. In that case, a lot of things that you may do in that sport you might not be fond of. But the simple fact is, it's commitment over feelings, because at the end of the day, when you see the light at the end of the tunnel, all the sacrifice and work that pays off, it's a reason why it's not always fun, right? You have certain time frames or certain elements in the process that won't be fun. But at the end of the day, what is fun when it's coming to extract, or I should say, pull the best out of you to actually learn something? And we only learn really through discomfort, because that's how we learn, right? You're being challenged, and to be productive while you're being challenged is the true test of the wisdom, in which you will either see if you either learned, or you may have to repeat the same lesson you decided that you didn't want to learn, or you didn't catch it the first time. But for the folks who aren't spiritual, think of it this way: every system in life works the same way. If you build a house on a foundation that's cracked, no matter how nice the paint job looks, the house is going to fall. Same thing with arguments, policies, and beliefs. If the foundation isn't true, the whole thing eventually crumbles. And that's what we're watching happen in real time with this whole movement. They built their argument on the idea that biological sex doesn't matter, that feelings override biology, and that we can redefine words to mean whatever we want. And it's collapsing because reality doesn't care about your feelings, and truth is truth, whether you believe it or not. So take that with your family, stand on what's true. Don't let people make you feel crazy for stating the obvious. You don't need to be a politician or a pundit to see that when you can't answer the question, what is a woman? Maybe you're not ready to have the conversation. But let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications, spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.